Indiana, just a disastrous performance and a 16-point loss at Nebraska, Card. But before we get into the meat of this recap, I just want to address a couple important things off the top. Cart, I know you've been rusty. I know we haven't recorded. It's been a couple days. You just haven't given us much at all. You're not really giving us much until it's too late. You're really just not giving us enough. And honestly, like, you're supposed to be my starting co-host. My starting co-host has been awful this week. That's how I feel right now. Just throwing you under the bus. You okay with that?
That better be a big bus.
It better be a big bus. I'm obviously alluding to Mike Woodson, who decides to just throw
Oh,
everybody under the bus after this one. Hey, Mike, interesting. Does he apparently he was unaware that maybe this roster has some critical issues that could lead to 16-point road losses when you need Xavier Johnson to be your do everything guy in the backcourt. Crazy that wouldn't work out, Cart.
yeah, I thought that was a Mick Cronin impression. My fault.
Oh, whoops, sorry. All right. Well, you seem to have a little pep in your step today. In all seriousness, you got the Indiana shirt on. Is that the Race Thompson jersey tee?
This is the Race Thompson jersey tee that was purchased before we entered Nick's. I believe it's called Nick's. Yeah, where we play Sink the Biz in Bloomington on our trip there for College Hoops to Go last year. Left very impressed with Bloomington. Love Bloomington, the town. Great place. But this is the last time that this shirt will be in my arsenal. I'm giving it up. There's a Purple Heart pickup that happens every month in my neighborhood. This will be going to that, and some probably heftier size middle schooler or high schooler is going to have to rock this Race Thompson jersey tee. And they're probably going to have to answer questions about why this team that they're wearing on their shirt is going on the road to Nebraska and getting dog walked.
It's not good. It's certainly not good. Yeah, I share your respects and your love for Bloomington, or as I affectionately referred to it as the Tin.
Let it go. It's
I'm
not
not
the
going to let it go because I'm actually going to bring it full circle right now, Cart. It's the Tin, which means that in the Tin, there's probably a lot of Tin men, you could say, right? Maybe Indiana's a team full of Tin men. Well, the Tin men, if only they had some heart, Cart. Wouldn't that be nice? Because this Indiana team does not have a lot of that, my friend. I was disgusted by this performance. I had Indiana to cover on paper. I thought Indiana could win this game on paper. No, they can't. And the most troublesome thing to me was that it feels like they've lost sight of what worked in the few games. Yes, it was lesser competition, but what worked for Indiana in this last week was Malik Reneau being a superstar. And then in this game, he was in foul trouble in the first half. He got auto benched, but like, I don't know that Reneau's ever going to be featured in the way that he was without Kel'el Ware and without Xavier Johnson. If those two guys are on the floor, and if you were winning games, if the outputs were good, then I think you're okay with that because you want talent, obviously. You want help for Reneau. But if you're not going to win games, if you're going to get dog walked by one of the most average teams in this conference with your full camaraderie of guys, isn't it just way more beneficial to say, let's stop pretending Xavier Johnson's impactful to this program? Let's stop pretending Kel'el Ware, who's going to be in the NBA in 3 months, should be the face of this thing? Because I don't think if Ware is the do-everything guy, I don't think this Indiana team has a chance.
Right. It seems it's starting to approach the category of Ware's going to get his, he's the guy. Is that necessarily going to lead to wins? Now, I'm not ready to put it in the like, we've had a couple players that we've gone through across the Big Ten where we're like, that player playing good doesn't necessarily lead to winning basketball. And I'm not trying to downplay what Kel'el Ware is doing. I think that he's playing at an all Big Ten level personally. Like, I think that he's really good. And obviously the stats back that up. But with that said, there was just so many narratives and things said about this team coming into the preseason, about guard play, about this being the best defensive backcourt, maybe not in the Big Ten, but in the country. And they have just got repeatedly cooked by every single guard that has stepped in front of them. And I'm not sure what show it's from, but we've all seen the meme of the guy in the hot dog suit talking about we're all trying to find out who's responsible for this. That's Mike Woodson. That is Mike Woodson. Like, this is what he did. He put this roster together, and now he's complaining about the roster that he put together. He put all his eggs in the Xavier Johnson basket. That basket has holes in the bottom of it. Like that's what happens when you do this. And now he's kind of feeling the repercussions of his actions. And look, I I don't want to do all Indiana in this because I think we'll get to it, but I actually was impressed with Nebraska basketball in general. And there needs to be a conversation about Nebraska basketball. They're not the same old Nebraska. Hoiberg is finally doing something at Nebraska after all these years of cake pops and him riding on the coattails of his Iowa State years. But with that said, like if Mike Woodson wasn't an Indiana legend who won that school a national championship and who, well, I mean, you also got to give him credit for recruiting as well, who's bringing in 5-star guys, would he not be like on the chopping block? Like, I'm surprised there's not more, I don't know, like fan bases or fans of Indiana being like, is Woodson really the guy? Like, you don't want to fire a guy like Woodson because he's an Indiana legend, but also like, how long are you gonna kind of just let this like level of okay go on with a program that is prestigious like Indiana?
Well, I think last year bought him time because I think last year was better than okay. And
Okay. Well,
I know.
the thing is, I think he has bought himself time because even with this going on, like next year, he's got Liam McNeely coming in, and next year maybe kel'el Ware's gone and renews the featured guy, and Xavier Johnson is gone, and maybe they go get a point guard from the portal. Like there's still something there, but I just I don't know. There's a lot of narratives out there about what this Indiana team could be or what they are right now. And everyone's saying, like, oh, this team is so and so. They haven't really had a bad loss. They keep winning, but yet everyone keeps saying bad things about them. This is why people are down on this team and say bad things about them, because this is who they are. This is how they perform.
Yeah, you saw the bottom fall out. That's what I think. And the reason I think Woodson hasn't been like full-blown hot seat, he might get to that point, but the reason he hasn't yet is because I think he's established a pretty high floor in his short time at Indiana. Like Tom Crean's teams had a floor of 16 losses, 14 losses. Like at the end of his tenure, they were losing a lot of games. Archie Miller's teams lost 15 games his final season, 12 and 15. They would have lost more if that season didn't get cut short. He had 15 losses a couple years before that. Mike Woodson has not been great, but his worst season at Indiana, they were 21 and 14. Last season, 23 and 12. Like both years, they made the NCAA tournament. So to me, that's a high floor until proven otherwise. This year's team has been horrible, but they're still winning games. That's been the story of the season, right?
Yeah,
Like
but you want to know what we call that?
what?
We call that a Trace Jackson Davis merchant.
I see. I can't get there because I thought TJD got so much better last season, and he was good his whole career. Don't get me
No,
wrong.
I'm saying he did. I'm saying he did, and Woodson deserves credit for that.
But then that's like we
what
can't call him a merchant if we're giving him credit for how good TJD was. Like to me, Mike Woodson was a big part of last season. TJD got the team to a place where they were.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. But also, I'm saying that did TJD not cover up for maybe a lot of the I don't know what the word is, like the weaknesses of Woodson as a roster constructor, as a coach.
I just wouldn't.
As
This season's issues are different than last season's issues, and I don't like that I'm out here defending Mike Woodson to a crazy.
Are they different though? Really?
Jalen Hood-Schifino was awesome last year. What are we doing? Like
I know, but I'm
backcourt.
saying like it was a spacing fit thing, and the only reason that Jalen Hood-Schifino actually got to be a part of like a main cog of the team, in my opinion, and be that guy, that main guy, is because of a Xavier Johnson injury.
I mean, he was starting at the two. Like he was playing a lot last year. Like I disagree.
I'm saying it was a really good player in Jalen Hood-Schifino that was, in my opinion, playing out of position, and then because of an injury, went to the position that he should be playing, and they started to flourish.
I mean, I guess he's a 6'6" guard. You want him to start from day one at point guard? Like, to me, they had a good backcourt last year until Xavier Johnson got hurt, and then they got better because Xavier Johnson's not a good player. So, like, I just it's a thing that we've done with your program with Tom Izzo. It's a thing that we've done with my program with Juwan Howard. Like, you have to evaluate shit year to year. You can't be like the entire Woodson tenure has been marred by the issues this team has been marred by. Yes, there are some things that are consistent, but the reason this year's team is in such a dire spot is because they are so much more pronounced as weaknesses than last year's versions or previous seasons. Like, this team is diabolically bad at shooting. Last year's team did not have that issue. This year's team is even thinner in the backcourt. Like, they just straight up didn't replace Hood-Schifino. That was the issue all offseason. Was like he knew they were losing this guy to the NBA, so go get someone. He didn't get someone. And we called it out at the time. We said it was crazy. It wouldn't have been as crazy, still would have been crazy, but it wouldn't have been as crazy if Xavier Johnson was a player that you could trust at all. And I know Xavier Johnson has been a productive player in his 5 years of college basketball at multiple different stops, right? That run he had in the Big Ten tournament a couple years ago that pushed Indiana to the tournament, he played great for the final months of the season. He hasn't been that guy in 2 calendar years. It just hasn't been the case. And he's been up and down. He's been in and out of the lineup. Injuries happen. Like, we got shit for it from Xavier Johnson himself in the offseason when we said it's insane to bank an entire season on a guy who has a history of going down and missing games. And then 1 month into the season, he goes down and misses games. And we've said it all along, or other people have said it all along. They got to get Xavier Johnson back. They got to get Xavier Johnson back because they have nobody else there. Well, they got him back tonight, Cart, and he was horrible. Like, and I'm sure he's still not 100%. I'm sure he's still trying to play through it. But that's not a situation that Indiana wants. Like, I'm telling you right now, if the rest of the season is going to be Xavier Johnson has to play through injury for us, you're going to get a lot of nights like this tonight. He's not a good player when he has to play through injury and try to grind shit out. And look, man, even at the beginning of the season, he wasn't playing well. Like, he now on the season, he has 7 games he's appeared in for Indiana this year. He's scored in double figures 3 times in 7 games. He has more assists than turnovers twice in 7 games. Like, this kid has been a disaster of a player on this roster this season, even before the injury. And now you're banking on he's got to be the answer for everything. It's going to fail. I think they'd be better served if they just avoided this altogether. And that sounds crazy because they don't have a guard. Like, they're horrible without Xavier Johnson, but I think they're even worse trying to bank on him being the savior of this than they would be if it was just Trey Galloway and Malik Reneau got to figure it out.
Yeah, and I think this is, and you know what, looking back on it, I came off a little bit harsh on Woodson and what he's done as far as his tenure and things like that. But just to put it in a year-by-year analysis like you did, I think that, we praise coaches for pulling the right strings. Like, I think as a podcast, you and I are the first to come out and be like, you know what? We said this in the offseason. We were wrong. That coach was right. Credit to him. That's why, where we, whatever phrase we want to use. At the start of the season, this summer, like you said, Woodson said, I'm good. I'm going to ride with Xavier Johnson in the backcourt and the guards that I have. And if it would have turned out okay, then we would have been like, oh, Woodson, genius. He knows. He's a great coach. He did this. He did that. Now, with the state that it looks, where, like I said, on a game-to-game basis, you are outguarded no matter what the opponent. And I say outguarded, I mean that the other guards are better than your guards on mostly a night-to-night basis. You're going to end up with this. Like, this is what's going to happen. Like, this is what it's going to look like. And you're going to let, obviously, Kisei Tominaga is a great player. And, when he gets hot, that's a very tough player to check. But he came in, he looked Xavier Johnson and Trey Galloway right in the eyes and said, y'all can't F with me. That's crazy to me. Like, if they're supposed to be those guys, they're supposed to be this great defensive backcourt. Like, Nebraska got whatever they wanted in that game. They made that look extremely easy. They made that look like a cakewalk.
Yeah. The scariest part for me is Indiana made shots in this game. They shot 50% from 3. They made 9 threes. Like, that's season highs. Like, that's not going to happen again for this Indiana team. And they lost by 16 points in a game where they shot the ball well from 3. That's terrifying. Do you like Woodson's comments? Do you dislike them? You said he should be taking accountability. He definitely threw Xavier Johnson under the bus. He threw kel'el Ware under the bus a little bit here. Actually, no, it wasn't even Ware. It was really Mackenzie Mbako, Trey Galloway, and Xavier Johnson were the 3 players he singled out individually. Do you think that's fair or not?
I'm not the person to ask about this. I'm a big advocate of coaches throwing players under the bus, to be honest with you. I hate the sneak comments, the We need better play from our players who wear a leg sleeve, who have a certain pair of shoes on. I'm not going to name that player by name, but if any players out there with maybe a last name that rhymes with Schmonson, I need them to play a little bit better. I'm all for just like saying straight up, because in my eyes, the players know that they didn't play well. So I'm not a big, like, I'm against coaches throwing guys under the bus. I'm against it if it's like not their fault in general, but he didn't say anything that wasn't factual.
Okay, I'm surprised you and I are both on this side of this. I agree. And I don't think most Indiana fans will agree, because I think most are going to be like, come on, Woodson, this is all your fault. There's a major difference here between what Woodson's doing in this postgame press conference and what Mick Cronin is doing. Mick Cronin for the last month has complained. He's thrown shots at opposing players, to criticize his own guys, Bona in the front court. He's been like, well, the guys he went up against were mid-major guys. Like, that's just wrong. Mid-major guys punked you. He's complained that they don't have NIL. He's blamed his own institution, right? Like, that's much different, and not owning your own mistakes and your own evaluations. I think Woodson isn't, when he criticizes these guys, he's not necessarily saying that he was flawless. Like, he's not ducking smoke. Like, I'm sure he would admit he should have made different moves in the offseason at this point. Xavier Johnson can play better than this. Like, even though I'm not a Xavier Johnson guy, like, you got 0 points in 15 minutes from Xavier Johnson tonight with 4 turnovers. Like, that is the worst any point guard in the country can possibly play. Whoever the coach is, whoever the player is, you have to be like, we need more from that guy. And if there's one criticism I have, I wouldn't have lumped Trey Galloway in there, because I don't think Trey Galloway was awful. And I think maybe he lumped Trey Galloway in there just to take a little sting off of the fact that he's criticizing his point guard who's coming back from injury. But, like, I give him credit for looking the cameras in the eyes and being like, Xavier Johnson killed us, because that's what happened. And if Xavier Johnson doesn't improve his play, this season's over for Indiana. And at a certain point, I think Woodson might have the tough decision to make of, do I just shut him down? I mean, what happened last year, Cart? Xavier Johnson went away. He went away. He just went away. Goodbye. And Indiana got better. So,
But at the same time, if they shut it down, we're bringing in Jalen Hood Cups, like, not a first round draft pick.
let me give Cardio Cups a moment of credit here. I thought he was really good last night in his minutes.
Yeah, yeah. Bench Cups is great. Starter Cups, that's not it.
5 points.
Not this year.
5 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists to 0 turnovers in 26 minutes. You can win with that more than you can win with what Xavier Johnson gave you last night.
That's true.
Bottom line for me, they gotta feature Renew. I've seen enough. Yeah, I think you were right at the beginning of the season when you said it. A good version of Indiana is built around Renew, and I still think this team thinks they're built around Johnson and Ware. And if you're built around Johnson and Ware with Renew just kind of like clunkily running alongside Ware, I'm out. I think that's a horrible basketball team. If they build around Renew and Mbako and work in where you can, and Xavier Johnson goes and gets a job, there's a lot of great organizations in Bloomington that would love his services right now. Like, a lot.
Yeah, can I one last thing on this before we give Nebraska some flowers, because I'd love to hear your Nebraska takes on this. I just want to say that this, to me, from the outside looking in, isn't a bounce back, take this adversity, take this lump and just move on and move forward and move onward and upward. This is a team that is not going to respond to adversity in my eyes. So I'm very interested to see what the next game looks like. I'm not sure who's on their schedule. But
Ohio State at home, back at the 10.
Ohio State at home. I've always said, like, when you take a tough loss on the road, very hard to win in the Big Ten. If you have a chance to bounce back at home against a good basketball team, it tells me a lot about your basketball team.
Yeah. We'll have a preview of that game up on the channel shortly, by the way. But all right, you want Nebraska thoughts? My quick Nebraska thoughts. This is a good basketball team. Good is relative, though, but they're a good basketball team. They're good within the confines of the Big Ten this season. I don't think this team will win an NCAA tournament game. I think they can make the NCAA tournament, but they need to really handle their business for a 20-game sample size. And give them credit, they've handled their business right now. That Michigan State win at home is going to look really good. Anytime you get a win, I mean, you got to take care of business at home, right? Like we can't overpraise them for beating Indiana, who we think is bad at home. But right now, Nebraska is taking care of business at home. If they can steal 1 to 2 marquee wins on the road, I think there's a path because there's 5 teams that I think will make the tournament from this conference: Purdue, Illinois, Wisconsin, Ohio State. Those are locks. Michigan State is going to get there, even if I don't frame them as a lock. They're going to get there. Outside of that, I don't think anybody else has a chance. Like, you're looking like Boo Booey, Northwestern, he shoots them there, or you're looking at Nebraska. And to me, Nebraska is the 6th best team in this conference this year. That's a really sad thing for this conference, but I think they can get there, and that's exciting. Tominaga's great. It was good to see Mast back. He didn't look like himself fully, but played 30 minutes and held up well.
Yeah, just in the space of a Nebraska basketball landscape and a Nebraska basketball fan, you're witnessing the greatest season in the Hoiberg era already.
Yeah.
And it'll probably end as the greatest season in the Hoiberg era. So what I'm saying is, for Guy and the 7 other Nebraska basketball fans out there, enjoy this season. And also, I was wrong about Nebraska being a bottom cellar dweller team. They are in the concept of Big Ten, a good basketball team, because Fran called it quits basically on Iowa and Doug called it quits on the classroom. So those 2 teams aren't a factor anymore.
Which I support, by the way. Just want to make that clear. Somebody had to take a stand to admissions, and my little 4'7" point guard that could finally was the one to do it. I'm going to bite my tongue on this. Can't believe I'm doing this. Is Fred Hoiberg like a sneaky good job candidate for schools that may or may not want a different coach?
I don't know if I'm willing to go there.
Hear me out. He's gettable, number 1, right? I think Fred would leave Nebraska.
Would he?
Anybody? I think so.
I think he makes big time money in Nebraska,
He
honestly.
does make big time money. You're right. There's probably a big buyout, but like he would. It's Nebraska. It's Fred Hoiberg.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's making big time money, big time buyout. They love him, and like
Do they love him? Do they love him?
They've been okay with him just being a 2-pack of ass the past couple years. Like, everyone's okay with it because you get cake pops and you get Kisei Tominaga.
I don't think they love him. They might love him this year. I don't think they loved him before this year. But if you're telling me my program couldn't get Fred Hoiberg right now, I am down immeasurable levels of bad.
Fred Hoiberg saying no to Michigan would be the funniest shit ever.
Fred Hoiberg's on my expanded short list, by the way. I know I have. You have to make Tom Izzo say no. You have to start there. But once we get to like Dane Fife levels, I'm willing to hear out Fred Hoiberg. Anyways, all right. Okay. We will have Indiana Ohio State preview up on the channel later this week. We might have to just start doing Nebraska previews straight up because that's a good basketball team. That's Carter Elliott. I'm GregWaddell. Xavier Johnson, I know you're watching this. Good luck, my friend. I truly mean this. Would love to see you perform at really anything, man. I mean, this was horrendous. 0 points. 0 points.
Crazy.